The electrical recording revolution of 1925 really was just that. You could capture a musician who could play at any dynamic level they wanted, and it would be driven by a microphone and a valve amplifier onto your record. Hitherto, you had to shout down a recording horn to actually get any sort of level at all onto your record. Not only could you play more dynamically, but it also captured more frequencies, more of those treble and bass frequencies that were absent on earlier recordings. Now, really what the magic was with all of these records was the fact that you had a band all playing together live into the mic, and then you'd sell your record. Now, of course, that's still being done now, but you can correct things. And also, if you're in a studio on your own like I am, how are you going to recreate the sort of human interaction between all of those parts when you're laying one over the top of the other? How are we going to do that? As I said in my opening gambit, the recording technology of the 20s finally allowed the musician to actually listen back and go, oh yeah. But as the decades progressed, it became more honest as well, so you couldn't hide behind any little crackles or pops and clicks of a record if there was a little mistake there. No, it became much more honest. Now, of course, nowadays we can correct things and that's absolutely fine, but we've got to be very mindful of retaining that original performance. Now, I've got GarageBand for iOS here, and you think, why have you got that if you're trying to demonstrate human control? Well, you can do it. I mean, I'm going to do this on GarageBand. I'm just going to slow the tempo down a bit. Let's 96, that's fine. I'm going to set it to automatic on here, because I don't want the iPad to stop recording. Part of the problem with when you're recording is worrying about what the equipment is doing, but if it records, if it works flawlessly, then great, you're in business. So I'm going to record something using the piano sound here. Now, if I play on the screen, it's not very dynamic, and of course it's a touch screen. It's not going to be half as good as a weighted keyboard that's playing through GarageBand. That's much better. So I'm going to record something along with the metronome, and then I'm going to record other parts, but listening to the piano only. And I'll explain why. In that recording, there was quite a lot of variation in rhythm. Now, if I switch the metronome off now and play this back, I don't want to listen to the metronome anymore. I need to listen to my own performance and work out how it is I'm going to put other instruments to it. So I'm going to try and I've just made a few mental notes about what's going on there. Of course, it's not quantized at all. If I were to go into the settings, come out of that, settings, and go to quantize, if you look at the green on the display, if I was to set this to 8th note, for example, there's quite a lot of movement there. I don't want any of that. I want to retain the performance. So I'm going to add a drum part to this. Now, I've got to be very mindful of this because, of course, the drums, it's going to be more obvious if there are rhythmic problems. But I still want to play to that piano part. Now, I'm going to use the keyboard here to play back the sounds through GarageBand. That sort of thing. And then I'm going to try and record the drums to the piano. This might take a couple of goes. I'm going to record double tempo as well. So there's too much going on there at the moment. Much too much. Just got to be a little bit more gentle. Now, as I'm recording, I also want to maybe tweak the mix. So I'm just going to have the drums ever so slightly quieter when I'm recording so I can really home in on that piano. Okay, now, before I carry on, before I look at those drums, I'm just going to try adding a bass, because when you add a bass with a piano and drums, the three things tie nicely together. So, there's my bass, which I'm going to play again through the keyboard because it's more predictable in terms of its volume level. Okay, that's starting to work for me because there is that sort of interaction between the three things. Those three things working together as an entity make more sense than just the piano and the drums. Now I'm going to use my headphones now in order to record some acoustic guitar parts. It's important to have live things happening here because actually it's not just the humanity of what you're doing, it's also the sounds that you're using. All the sounds that I've just used are on every iPad on earth, whereas the late 70s beaten up Echo 6-string that I've got here is less common. So, and of course the playing and the chords and what you can do with it. So, I'm going to try recording some acoustic guitar along with this. So I'm just going to turn my headphone volume up a little bit. I'm just using the internal mic of the iPad as well. Okay, so I didn't start particularly well. Okay, while I'm here, I'm going to record something. I'm going to record another one of those. It's important with acoustic guitars, if you can duplicate the track, if you can record roughly the same thing again and then pan them, it's a nice effect. People say, oh, why don't you just copy the part and then just pan them? Well, actually, you don't get any stereo at all because it's exactly the same part, so it's still mono. Now I tried to do roughly the same thing there both times. While I'm here, I'm just going to pan them slightly, and I'm also going to turn them down just a little bit. And then I'm going to actually record a little lead line over the top with a bit of reverb, and then see what happens with that. course, in an ideal world, you'd remain completely silent until the note has completely died, because then it's easy. It sort of mixes itself at the end. You've just got this nice chord that's unencumbered by any noises, squeaks, all of that. So if I just play that back now, I've got my entire mix. Now, when you play back and you're doing mixing, always ideal to do it on speakers. You can do it to a certain extent on headphones, and it's useful for checking your left, right and your panning and all of that, but it's much better to listen in a space. Now, there's a little timing issue there. Now, this wasn't so apparent on headphones. It's actually one of those acoustic guitar parts there. You can see at bar 5. Yes, the second one was a little bit late. Oh no. This is the trap you don't want to fall into. So actually what I'm going to do is I'm going to try and just bring it back ever so slightly by just going into snap to grid off and then just bringing that attack a little bit further in, and hopefully the chords afterwards will be right as well. Ah. That's not too bad, but there's a little bit of a rushed bit now, because of obviously I've dragged it all back. Now, this is where you think, well, actually, why don't I just go and do it again? Because it's so easy to do it again and get it right. This is where the technology can sort of start unraveling, and you can end up with this sort of, oh, I wish I could get this right. And you think, well, the guitar's there, the mic's there. 1, 2, 3, 4, do it again. Now this, of course, also invokes the whole thing of guide tracks. Will you play better if there's a vocal line or top line there? Chances are you probably will, because actually it's all about those vocals. That's a much, much better result. I've actually got something that I kind of wanted there, really. Instead of trying to drag something back like I did just then, I'm kind of glad I did it, so that it really illustrated that it doesn't work so well. Now the lead line there was a little bit lazy on that bar 5, but actually, because it's a lead line, because it's a vocal line, really you can leave that. Well, it depends. It depends completely on what you want. Notice also, when I was listening to that, I wasn't looking at any pictures on the iPad or the computer. Well, the computer's just recording this presentation, but I would just literally just use your ears only. If you use your sight all the time, your ears start to fall lower in the pecking order, and you don't want that. So there is a little take on how you can conduct a recording session with no metronome, but just by listening to the initial instinct of that piano.